Good evening to my guests. It is the Rainmaker all the way from Ghana. And we've got Andile Mazwai right here with us in South Africa. Andile Mazwai is someone I met many, many moons ago. In fact, before even meeting him, I used to hear him on radio all the time, commentating about the state of our economy, the state of the rand, and so on. And that was back in 2002 and 2001. And I was thinking, wow, this must be an amazing guy. And over the years, we bumped into each other and we became friends. And he is a businessman, he is an entrepreneur. He actually has played in the stockbroking market for the longest time. So if you need any advice offline, please get in touch with him. Secondly, we have the Rainmaker. Inshira is a well-known and well-accomplished journalist at the core, has many kind of shows that he's hosted many leaders as well. So we're looking actually at having some of those insights in this session today. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for the privilege and opportunity.
Okay.
Thanks, Yolanda. Wonderful to be here.
Thanks, Andile. So let me actually open it up. I've actually been running a poll around whether leaders should be born or leaders, in fact, whether leaders are born or leaders are created or made. And, on Twitter, it is sort of neck and neck, right? It's about 60-40 towards made right now. Earlier on, it was 50-50. And on Instagram, very clearly, the results are showing leaders are made. What is your view, Andile, on this topic?
Given my identity, when I think of leader, it's immediately a Nelson Mandela, it's a Barack Obama, and they just sound good. They look good. They're just so confident that the temptation is to say, surely these guys were born this way. However, when I look at it, though, I think it's beyond that. I think what makes a leader is the story that they have. A Mandela knew where he was and he knew where he was going. It was a long walk to freedom. Obama also knew where he was. He was living with people who had become disillusioned with an American dream, and he wanted to reignite that dream. And he said, yes, we can. And so when I look at it that way, I think that leaders are people who are deliberate, who have taken a proper look as to what their circumstances are, and have a genuine hope and belief that they can make it better. And once they crystallize what that future looks like, we then call them leaders. So I am leaning into leaders are made, they're self-made rather than born.
Okay, thanks, Andile, for that view. Inshira, your view?
Well, I'm inclined to make this very interesting by taking the opposing side. But deep down in my heart, I believe that leaders are also made. But I would rather look at it as a spectrum where on the left of the spectrum is being born and the very right of the spectrum is being made. The making happens along the lines that Andile espoused. One, your circumstances can lead you into a leadership position. Two, the environment you find yourself in would also play a role in how you become a leader. And then on the born side, some of us are born with natural abilities to walk into a room and command the attention of everyone. I'll cite the example of the late President Jerry John Rawlings. He had such a charisma that just basically would make an entire stadium come to a halt just because he'd come to watch a match, and leaders would have these things that are natural and innate to them. However, the making is from the premise that there's nothing new under the sun. So you would take a Nelson Mandela story, Long Walk to Freedom. If you go back into history, Moses did it. So the examples that have gone before us, either directly from mentors and coaches or from reading and hearing about others, whether they did a good job or whether they didn't, we still can draw some inferences that can guide how we become leaders ourselves. So while I lean to leaders are made, I say that the stars.
So you're saying that leaders are firstborn. I mean, someone actually sent me a message to say you actually have to have a leadership gene in you in order
Wow.
to actually be a leader. Do you believe that, Andile?
No, I strongly believe that the first leadership role that we have to take on is just leadership of ourselves. I'll speak as a South African. Often we are looking for some Messiah who's going to deliver us from whatever situation we find ourselves in. Yet I would first say, as an individual, have you genuinely taken stock of where you are, your own personal goals, and have you been deliberate about deciding on where you want to go? And if you haven't done that, I don't believe that you need a leadership gene to do that. I just think you need to take yourself sufficiently seriously. You have but one life. And if you mean to live it well, then every morning you should wake up and say to yourself, am I walking in the direction of where I want to go? Or am I just simply following whatever story happened to pop up on my screen?
Yeah. So, I mean, Insha, same question. Do we have to have a leadership gene? Do we not have to? Where does this come from?
I honestly don't think there's a leadership gene. I think it would be rather a newfangled terminology to describe what Andile, mentioned, that the things that you will do repeatedly, deliberately, towards achieving a certain dream to transform your own life, affect your immediate circles, and hopefully have ripple effect across even larger geographies, would be the thing that I can look to as the leadership gene. So the set of principles that one would need to. It wouldn't be genes to me in the sense of the genetic, the scientific gene as we know it. That said, if you're in an environment and you can see that there's room for improvement, that tells me that you already have exhibited a certain amount of leadership gene. Because what you then would do is either sit and wait for a messiah to come and bridge the gap that you've identified, or you take the bull by the horns and say, I would do A, B, and C to, in one way or the other, affect what's happening. Let me take my role in society as a journalist. And you know, in the time that you were working here in Ghana, that I would get into all kinds of trouble by the things I say about the government or by, whatever we talk about. Now, my role in society may not be seen as one that is a definite definition of leadership. However, because I can analyze the data set before me and say, okay, well, could we have had options for A, B, and C? Could it have been better? That's me expressing my personal leadership in the space. Now, I could rant about stuff all I want, but being a leader would be when I'm done ranting, I'm able to proffer one or two options. They may be fabulously short-sighted and wrong, but at least I've taken a step to say, this is what I'm willing to do to make the change that's required. Now, where there are gaps in my own skill set and my ability to, for example, understand economics or understand the stock exchange, I can then reach out to people who have walked the road, understand the nuances of and the specifics of that specialty, and leverage my passion on the knowledge they provide to take action and make the change that I require.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I've got someone here who's just said, definitely born, you are destined, right? And, and it's going exactly against what you actually are saying, right?
Yeah.
Why would other people be so firm that leaders are born?
Wow.
Anyone can take that question.
I think that some people, I think it's all what we're very often exposed to. We have been exposed to popular culture. We've been exposed to a lot of new knowledge and new thinking that's been really propagated to the point where we often look externally for answers when a lot of the answers really reside in us. Now, this individual, if they analyze their own activities over the last 48 to 72 hours, will be able to recognize that they have leadership qualities in them. The fact that they would not wake up in the morning and go and smash open an ATM machine because they need money is a sign of leadership. Because whatever you do has an impact on the people around you, those who can see and those who can hear about it. So if you know deep down inside of you that taking certain actions might not inure to the benefit of my person and the people around me, you have started demonstrating a certain amount of leadership. And that, for me, at the core, is what leadership is about owning your responsibilities and taking steps to ensure that the things you do impact you positively and touch the people who are close to you and the rest of our, society or the globe.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, there's someone also saying every era has leaders that are either born or created by circumstance and opportunity. I mean, do you actually believe that leaders are created by circumstance or opportunity, or is it something that is beyond that?
Of course, we have no idea what a Nelson Mandela would have been had he been born in Switzerland. We only know that he wouldn't have been the Nelson Mandela that we know. So I think often we are asking the question in a counterfactual that we just simply wouldn't know. I'm still staying, though, on the idea that leadership is internal rather than external. And to go back to your previous comment, I think that we're often too harsh on ourselves. If you have anything less than 1 million followers on social media, somehow you think you're not worthy, that you're not leading anyone. And I come back to ask the simple question that says, are you leading yourself first? And if you are able to lead yourself, then truly you are a leader. I fear that so many of us have let go of the power that is within us. We've externalized it, we've given it to other people, and we allow ourselves to be led by whatever way the wind is blowing on the day, that we then genuinely begin to believe that there is no leadership within us and that it is only the preserve of a few special people.
Okay, so Andy, just tell me, I mean, if I understand the leading self first, right? Always important, right? However, if you look at the great leaders that have actually impacted the course of society positively, right? Positively and negatively, because there's been both, people tend to think that leadership only applies to people that have been good. Hitler was a leader, for example. I mean, to be able to galvanize so many followers and actually believe in a common vision, right? Big vision, whatever the vision was in terms of their time. And at the same time, you have Churchill. And then in our context, we have the Kwame Nkrumahs, and we've got the Nelson Mandelas here. Who are the people that you would say are good leaders, and why?
Again,
and do you think they were born or made?
Again, I'm still staying very strongly. In fact, the more we talk, the more convinced I am that leaders are made. I found myself a few years ago being thrust into a leadership position at church where, as parents, we take our young tiny tots to Sunday school and just treated it as a daycare, and then only to learn that they expected that the parents themselves would get involved. I then got involved. I was amazed. I was amazed that by simply showing up, given our dynamics as a Black male, to show up at a Sunday school, read a passage for kids. This is now a decade later. I still have those kids come up to me and tell me the difference that it made in their lives. Is that not profound leadership? We shouldn't limit it to the number of lives that we affect. If we believe that every life matters, then it's okay if you've touched 3 lives or 13 lives. It doesn't have to be 13 million.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that one. I believe that, if you dropped a piece of a small stone into a still pond of water and you watch the ripple, the force of the ripple goes farther than the distance that the stone traveled. And that's what leadership really is about. The people you talked about, whether it's Churchill, whether it's Hitler, whether it's Kwame Nkrumah, whether it's Madiba, whether it's Robert Mugabe, Gaddafi, you name it. And I think smaller the world gets, the more pressure there is on us to sort of exhibit the kind of leadership that thrusts us into the limelight. Because for every Obama, for every Martin Luther King, there are people who are actually making great impact that may never see the light of the news media, and therefore we would never hear about. There are matriarchs and patriarchs that are shaping families that will change the world tomorrow, but nobody's going to talk about them. So it's very easy for us to start getting a sense that leadership actually is when you have arrived on the stage where the whole world knows you. And that's why we externalize leadership, because a lot of what we're seeing as examples of leadership is what we're seeing on the big stage. I reckon there's someone who can run faster than Usain Bolt out there, but they may be in some little village where there's no track, nobody's ever asked them to run a race, to time them. So that talent might just not be put on the stage. So a leader first starts from you, starts from within you. So once you have that talent, someone might identify that talent, or you might come to that realization that I would like to be like that person. Okay, I'm a great football fan, and while I don't like Manchester United much, and no one should hate me for that, we all can make choices, whether good or bad. I love my Arsenal the way it is, but I admire Cristiano Ronaldo. I saw him when he evolved at Manchester United. He was not the most talented person, but his career has just exponentially grown to the phenomenon we know today because he recognized what he wanted to achieve. He recognized the people around him. He recognized the stage that he was on and applied himself. So a leader first, as Andile said, must lead yourself. There has to be something burning inside you that makes you take the right steps every day to ensure that you're on top of your game. Because if someone's going to follow you, they have to follow you somewhere. And if you're not going nowhere, then no one's going to be following you. So you wouldn't be leading. It starts with the self. So leaders are made.
Leaders are made. That's sort of where we are closing this off, is around leaders are made. So if you're a made leader, then, okay, there are lots of people actually listening to this and saying, I want to be a true leader, right? I've heard very clearly that it starts with self when you lead. So what do I do to first lead self and then also lead a society? Remember, while you can lead self, at the end of the day, leaders have followers, right? Whether it's one follower, two followers, or three followers, doesn't matter, a million followers. For you to be a leader that is making an impact, you actually have to have followers. So give me those two categories. One, how do I actually lead self? How do I go on a journey to lead self? What are the one or two things that I need to do? And then secondly, how do I lead in society? Give me those two, maybe one or 2 points on each one of those. Andile, from your side?
Thanks. Yolanda, there's a question which many of us are asked, often we're caught off guard. Whether we are asked at work, in a job interview, when we meet new people. And that question is, so tell me about yourself. And we just get stuck. It's like this light in our eyes and we fumble. I was born here. It is so unconsidered. And my task would be for everybody, write a chapter for yourself that answers the question, tell me about yourself. And in it, look forward. Ask yourself, what are my dreams? What is my passion? And you'll see how profoundly it changes the people around you and yourself when you start by answering the question as, well, my dream is, rather than I was born in. And that would be my challenge. And that speaks to the very core of finding the internal leadership within each one of us.
Fantastic point.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would use my two favorite acronyms or anagrams. DARE, D-A-R-E. First of all, you must have a dream and a desire to be better. And then secondly, you must take action. Thirdly, and your actions might be based on the data sets before you. I think that great bosses and great leaders are people who can observe even the worst leaders and learn not to be like them. So when you recognize, and then after you're taking action, you recognize where you are, recognize where you stand in society. What are the things before you? That awareness is going to shape the steps that you take. And the final thing in there, which is E for me, is simply to be energized. You must because leadership is a very difficult road. I've said this before, that having my own children gave me a second opportunity to rewrite my own life, because I'm molding these young boys to become hopefully great men who will impact on society. Therefore, I must model that which I speak of. So you must have energy to constantly go after the dream that you had in the beginning. Otherwise, you will lose the steam. And once you get stuck, people aren't going to follow because they need to go somewhere. And then the last thing is on the word lead, out of which leadership is born. You just have to leave your ego at the door. It should never be about you. It should be about the greater good. It should start with you, but it shouldn't be about you.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Wow.
Good.
So, Inshira, I mean, we keep on talking about leaders, right? And that leaders have to have followers, but there is another group of people that actually determine, in my mind, how successful or not leaders actually become. I mean, let's talk about those people.
Leading many people to follow one cause will have many facets and different parts of it. There may be requirements for you to be able to impact on things that are in geographies that you can't be presently. That means you're going to count on people to give you feedback. You're going to count on people to represent you there. And such people would have an impact on how you do things, because they're going to give you information. They're people you trust. So the people around the leader are critical to the leader's own success. As a CEO of a company, your exco are critical to your success, because you're not going to run the finance in addition to running the entire organization yourself. And so in choosing those people, they must first of all be aligned to the vision. And in alignment is not just accepting the job and saying, hey, I'm with you, but they must espouse a number of critical success factors which would be personal to them. Again, going back to leadership, starting from self. So I can't have a finance director of an organization who is dodgy and count on them to make my organization financially and ethically sound. If you have people who themselves are very flawed and have no intent on changing that, you can't count on them as your immediate circle as a leader. So the people you choose to be your immediate followers, who would also lead the rest of the followers, must be as aligned with you ethically from within as much as following the vision.
So, I mean, as you're talking, the one thing that's coming into my head is, these two constituencies, even your followers, the expectations that your followers actually have of you, right? Around maybe that you'll be ethical, or that you'll be able to deliver, or whatever it is, or expectation of excellence in terms of whatever the area you find yourself in, actually is an important part of how great a leader you become. The higher the expectation, the better the leader actually becomes. And at the same token, is the better the people that you have around you, the better the leader you become. So who's actually got the biggest impact on who the leader becomes in this triangle?
It's ultimately the leader. It's ultimately the one that everybody recognizes as the vision bearer. Because when businesses don't do well, there's a CEO that gets the axe.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you are responsible for driving the vision. You're responsible for making it happen. And it is also your responsibility to whip the others in line. Because if they're not aligned by actions to the vision, and not taking the steps to ensure that we're getting where we want to get to, and you sit aloof and not allow that to be corrected, then you have problems. I mean, there's countless examples of leaders that meant well, but didn't have the right people around them. And eventually, whenever their failure is recalled, nobody says, oh, they didn't have the great advice from these persons. They failed. And we see that happen to a lot of political leaders around the world, that, oh yeah, this guy's administration, maybe some trusted person who has his ear was just leading him astray. But ultimately, it is your responsibility as the leader to ensure that the expectations that the people have is aligned to the vision and to your actions in achieving those goals.
Oh, those are really profound words. Any last thoughts, any last comments, Andile, from your side?
Yolanda, I do happen to, I guess, mentor just a few people from time to time. And I really am putting this challenge, and this is the break point for me, to say, unless you can come up with that paragraph, and I'll give you a week or two, however long it takes you, pick up your device and just write that paragraph about yourself. That is the most important thing that I can tell people to do for themselves, because from that, you then carry on. If you don't make that investment in yourself, then unfortunately, I will then say, or you must then look in the mirror and say to yourself, you're not taking yourself sufficiently seriously enough.
Perfect. Thank you for those words. So wisdom actually shining through here. The Rainmaker, Mr. Inshura.
My final words will be that we are all leaders following leaders. And so if you go to a mentor to give you insights, as Andile does, don't forget that you as an individual has a unit or a circle of influence and who are also watching you. So the actions we take, the change that we seek is actually the calling on our hearts to become leaders. And that should guide our actions, that there are people whose lives may be touched, people you'll never meet in this life, but will meet somebody or hear from someone who's met you. So your actions are very important.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Inshura. Wonderful close from both my guests today. And really, I mean, to summarize from what they've said, is the context actually makes the lead at the end of the day. However, you start with self. No matter what context you find yourself, you actually have to start with self. Whether you wake up in the morning, whether you make your bed in the morning, whatever you do every day is what actually ultimately results in the person and the leader that you actually become when you start leading others. So leading self is one of the most critical actions that you are ever going to take. And there was a very clear call for action from Andile saying, write it down, write down. When someone says, please tell me about yourself, what are you going to say? And if you start looking forward about yourself, then what is the story that you are actually going to tell? Write that paragraph and see what it looks like and whether it actually is a call to action for yourself to say, okay, how do I become better at leading myself towards my own dreams, my own passions, and really what I want to achieve in society? And then, I mean, I loved the dare kind of analogy, right? Because it's so simple and yet so profound, right? It's are you daring yourself? Are you daring yourself to be as bold as Andile said? And are you setting those goals in the right way? And are you being like consistent and clear? You've got clarity around what those goals and purposes are. And are you taking action? Are you recognizing what, or you're cognizant of where you are and how you're doing things? And also, are you energized enough? What are the things that you're doing to make sure that you remain motivated in whatever you're doing? And in addition to that, I love the closing word that actually we have to leave the ego at the door. Great leaders know when to say, this is not going to work out for me. I'm sorry, guys, it didn't work out. Or I tried to get this right, but it didn't work, and so on. So they've got a level of humility that is able to allow them to constantly learn and actually move forward, but always being guided about that own kind of purpose or dream or thinking about self. So I hope this actually gives you some action points for yourselves around whether leaders are born or are they made, There are people with some genes that actually can stand up tall and say things, but most of us actually have to work hard at being leaders. And from the stats that I've seen, it's about 73% of us that are saying right now, leaders are actually made. So 73% of us believe that we can actually transform our whole kind of genetic or whatever kind of disadvantage in life, whatever you call it, circumstance or whatever, into real leadership, so that you can actually make sure that you have a positive societal impact. With those words, thank you very much for joining, and we will see you next time.